Come and check out the tutorial for the Tunic version of Simplicity 8265. Hi YouTube, I'm Crystal of Crystalsewsandstuff.com. Welcome back to the channel where I share sewing pattern reviews, sewing tips and techniques, and other fun related content. So today I'm going to be sharing with you a tutorial of the Tunic version of Simplicity 8265. Now this tunic is part of the Sew Wardrobe series that I've created with T of Crumpets Tea and Sewing. Now I've been working on the tunic and skirt portion of this pattern, and T has been working on the jacket and the pants version of this pattern. And so we went on ahead and decided to go ahead and create a series of different wardrobe style patterns that we can all share with you so that you can all create a wardrobe from a pattern. So now let's go ahead and get into the tutorial. Today we're going to be working on Simplicity 8265, and we're working on view C, which is the top of this pattern. And so the pattern pieces that you're going to need are piece number 6, which is the front, and you need 1 cut on the fold. Then you have the back, which is piece number 7, and you need 1 cut on the fold. And then you have piece number 8, which is the neck binding, and you have 1 cut on the grain line. And then you have piece number 9, which is the sleeve, and you need 2 cut according to the grain line. All right, and so those are all the pattern pieces you need, and I've already shortened mine according to the adjustment line here. I've raised it by, I think it's about 1 inch. Already selected on the pattern. So this is a petitable pattern. If you're taller, you might not need to make this adjustment. And if you're if your average size is around 5'4" to 5'7" or so, you won't need to make this adjustment. But if you're taller, you want to add space between these 2 lines right here. So once you have all your pattern adjustments made, then you can go ahead and cut the fabric out. And I'm going to show you how I'm using stripes for my top. So I'm doing it a little bit different than your normal way of cutting things on the fold. And so there's a couple of things you want to remember when you're cutting out stripes. And so what I like to do especially with wider stripes, I like to decide on a color line. So I decided that I wanted to have the bottom of my top land on the navy blue part of the fabric. So I'm going to line up the front piece with the blue line at the bottom. And then what you want to do is go ahead and pin everything all the way around the sides. And then for the front, since it's normal, this pattern piece is normally cut on the fold, but since we're working with stripes, we're going to cut it out this way on the fold. So we have the fabric lying right side up, and then we have it pinned very carefully right on the line. So you can see I have this pinned right on the line. And so what we're going to do is going to cut out just 1/2 of the top. So what you do next is you go ahead and you flip your pattern piece over to the other side along those pins you put in the center front. And that way you have a mirrored piece for your right and left, and you don't have to worry about matching the stripes. So everything will be exactly the same for your front. And then you're going to repin and cut out the other side. Okay, so you can also double check by folding over your fabric piece just to make sure everything is still aligned all the way up before you go ahead and cut out the other half. Okay, so when you're getting ready to cut out the back piece, you want to do the same thing. You want to make sure the bottom is lined up on the color you decided to use. So again, I'm using the navy blue for that. And then I'm going to pin all the way around and make sure I pin the center back section, and then I'll just flip it over again and do the right side the same way I did the front. Okay, so the next thing you want to cut out are the sleeves. And the key with the sleeves with stripes is you want to match up your front notch. This is the front notch right here. This is the notch from your front piece. And so you want to make sure that it's in the same, your notch is in the same color space as your front piece. And then you want to make sure the lines are in the same, lined up the same way. So you see how it has red, blue, red. So you want to make sure that's correct instead of blue, red, white. So that way you can make sure everything is lined up the way it should be. This notch right here is right across, directly across from your sleeve notch. And that's how you go ahead and make sure your sleeves are matched up with your bodice. So what you want to do with your second sleeve piece is you're going to put the sleeve on top of the fabric and match up all the lines, and then you're going to cut it out. So you're going to make sure every stripe is matched up on all the sides. And so you make sure your fabric is, and that's called mirroring. So you just put your fabric pattern pieces together, right sides together, and you cut out your second piece and mirror the other side, and then you cut it out. So you're going to want to mark out your notches. You have a notch here on the side. Don't go too far, too deep. Stay within your seam allowance. Then here the arms, whole arm side, and then you have one over here at the shoulders. So make sure you have your notches cut into. You can also cut them outwards. I like to just do a little snip. And then the next thing you want to do is mark your dots. You have, and mark the dot according to your size. So I'm doing a size 14. So I put I put a pin through the 14 dot, and then I like to go ahead and use the back of that pin as a guide and go ahead and mark that dot. And then you have another dot up here at the arm hole area. So put it in your size. So this is size 14. And you're going to mark that as well. Okay. And then you're going to repeat that for the other side. So the last piece that you're going to want to cut out is the neck binding. And so this piece is cut on the grain line. And so then you're going to go ahead and cut this out in one piece. And then you're going to mark your notches. You have a notch here at the center back seam. You have a notch at the other side of the center back seam. And then you have dots. You have a dot here as well as a dot on here. So you just mark your dots at your size. And so after that, you're done with all of your cutting. You should also mark the center front as well. So you can either put a little notch here, or you can go ahead and trace a line on the back of your pattern piece to mark where the center front is. Okay, so now we're going to get started on the top. So you're going to go to page 3 or 4 of your directions for Tunic C. And so the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and sew the shoulder seams together, right sides together. So you can also take an optional step is to add some knit interfacing to your shoulder seams. This stabilizes them. So you can go ahead and do that first. The next thing we need to do is we're going to place our pieces together, right sides together. So you're going to turn this over to the right side. So the next thing you're going to do is take your front piece and match up the shoulder seams right sides together. And first you're going to match up your notches. Okay, so we're going to sew this shoulder seam down at 5/8 inch on a zigzag stitch. So whatever your standard zigzag stitch is fine. So we're going to go ahead and sew that right sides together at 5/8 inch. So once you finish sewing up your shoulder seams, you're going to go ahead and serge off the edges with your serger, or you can do an overcast stitch on your sewing machine or zigzag stitch. Or just leave it raw because it's knit, it won't fray. The next thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and press out your seams. So the next step is to go ahead and we're going to serge the side seams all the way down. So we're going to serge all 4 sides of the side seams, which is a little bit different than the directions, because the directions tell you to go ahead and sew front to back just to this notch marker. There's a dot right here, so you're going to sew to that dot. But I like to go ahead and serge all of those seams up first. So I'm going to go ahead and serge all 4 sides of the side seams up first, and then I'm going to sew it up to the dot. We already serged the whole sides on all 4 sections, all 4 sections of the sides, and then we're going to go ahead and just sew this down at 5/8 inch, and then we're going to stop at the dot. I'm going a tiny bit over so that I can end at this stripe. If you're doing stripes, just make sure all of your stripes are lined up. Just double check on the inside to make sure all of your stripes are matching, so you can pin them on every single stripe is a good way to do it. So you go ahead and do that, and then you're gonna sew down at 5/8 inch, and then you're gonna end at your dot. I'm gonna end mine right at the stripe because it's right a little bit, tiny bit after the dot. I like to remove the pin just before I get to it so to keep the stripes straight. And then when you get to your dot, you go ahead and back stitch. You can do it a couple times. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is sew the sleeves. So you want to go ahead and match your notch as well as the bottom and the top, and then you put some pins in the middle to make sure everything stays nice and even. You don't have to use this many pins, but you want to use just enough pins to sew it down. I'm using this many pins because I'm sewing stripes. I want to make sure all of my stripes are staying lined up. So I like to pin my stripes individually to make sure everything is going to line up. So what we're going to do is sew each sleeve down at 5/8 inches, and then you're going to go ahead and finish off your sleeves again with your serger or zigzag stitch or overcast stitch on your machine. So after you sew up the side seams of your sleeves, go ahead and press out the seam, and if you have a seam roll, go ahead and use that. It helps get the seam flatter. If you don't worry, just press it flat on your iron board. So the next thing we're going to do is set in our sleeves. So what you're going to want to do is have your tunic, your top piece, with the wrong side out. So what you're going to do is pop in your sleeve into the hole of the top. And what you need to check for is the notches. So the back of the top is shown by 2 notches, and the front of the top is shown by 1 notch. So you want to make sure you have the correct sleeve matched up with the correct armhole. What you're going to want to do is just slip it in on the inside. You're going to want to match up your center seam of your sleeve piece to the center seam of your top piece. And you're going to match those seams up like that. Then you pop a pin in it. And then you match up your notches. So match up, you make sure it's double notch. So your double notch to double notch. And then you make sure you have your single notch to single notch. And then you match your dot at the top of the sleeve to the seam line of the shoulder seam. And after you do that, you're going to match up your other dot. So you should have another dot over here on both sides. So you're going to match that dot up with the other dot. And then if you need one or two more pins, you can add those in. But basically that's how you do it. And you're going to go ahead and sew this all the way around at 5/8 inch. So when you sew a sleeve, you want to start at the underarm seam and then sew it all the way around. Make sure everything is lined up to 5/8. I like to shift my fabric as I go along so there won't be any puckers. Make sure everything is nice and flat as you sew it around. Make sure this seam is flat, your shoulder seam. After you finish sewing up your sleeve, go ahead and serge or zigzag or overcast that on both of your sleeves. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is go ahead and hem your sleeves. And the hem allowance is 1 1/4 inches, but I'm only doing about 1/2 inch because I did take some length out of the sleeves earlier and I tried it on, and that's the length that I like. And so what I did is go ahead and I pinned up the sleeves at about 1/2 inch, and then I'm just going to go around the sleeve at 1/2 inch or so, and then at a zigzag stitch. So that's what I'm going to do to go ahead and hem both of the sleeves. Make sure you try it on to make sure you're happy with the sleeve length. Don't always just go by their hem length. Go by your body, and once you try it on and how you like it. So when I do sleeves with a zigzag stitch, what I like to do is start at the underarm seam, and I like to just go over the edge. You can also serge this off before you get started in order to do a serge finish and then just stitch along. But you can kind of do 2 in 1 when you do a zigzag stitch on the hem. So I like to do it so that I do it from the wrong side, and I start at the underarm seam, and I like for my stitch width to be 2.0. Actually, I'm going to do 2.5 by 2.5. I think it looks nicer when it's even. So 2.5 by 2.5 zigzag stitch, and you want to try to make it so your zigzag will go right over the cut edge, and that'll kind of finish it and hem it at the same time. Okay, and so there you have your hem. You can press that out, cut any loose threads, and then you just repeat that on the other side. Okay, so the next thing we're going to work on is the neck binding. So what you're going to do is match up the short ends of your neck binding, and then matching the notches in the corners, and then you're going to sew this down at 5/8 inches. You sewed the short sides together, go ahead and press out that seam. And then you're going to go ahead and fold it wrong sides together. So you're going to fold your neckband piece wrong sides together, matching up your seam, your back seam. And then you're going to match up your notches or dots. So you're going to have it all nice and fold it like this, and then you're going to give it a quick little press to make sure it all lays down, and then we're going to line it up to our neckline. Okay, so next you're going to find the notch on the back of your top, and then you're going to match the center seam to that notch. Then you're going to match the big dot to your center front. You should have your center seam matched to the back notch, your front dot matched to the center front, and then you're going to have one shoulder dot matched to the shoulder seam, and then one shoulder dot to the other shoulder seam. So, and make sure these are nice and flat. I'm going to start at the center seam on the back, and the seam allowance is 3/8 inch. Okay, so we're starting at the center seam at the center back, and the seam allowance for the neckband is 3/8 inches, and you're going to go ahead and sew that. Okay, and you're going to start pulling a little bit, just a little bit. Don't overdo it, but you want to try to get it to so it can match by the time it gets to the shoulder seam. So you're going to pull that as you sew. Just the neckband, not the fabric. Just double check that the under seam is flat. And so that's how you get your neckband on, and then you can go ahead and serge or zigzag or overcast the inside of your neckband, and that is it for the neckband. So our last step is going to be to hem the top. So what you're going to want to do is serge off your bottom hem, and if you haven't already, serge off the side seams of your slit, and then you're going to measure up your hem allowance. The hem allowance in the pattern is 1 1/4 inch, but you want to go ahead and try it on to make sure that's a hem depth that you like. And then what you're going to do next is you're going to pin up the bottom hem by 1 1/4 inch, and then next you're going to hem down the sides, well, pin down the sides on both side seams, and then put your pins in. And after you have it all pinned and pressed up, what we're going to do is sew down the side seams, and then pivot here, and then sew across, and then pivot here and go back up. So you want to go ahead and put a little mark where you want to go ahead and do your pivot. So I'm going to do mine at about a 1/2 inch from the bottom. So I'm just going to mark where I want to do my pivot so it's not on the same spot on both sides. And now you're going to line up the edge of the fold with the 1/2 inch seam line. And then I like to move my needle over about 2 ticks. And then, well, 3. I'm going to do 3 just to make sure it stays within this, in the hem. And then I'm going to lengthen my stitch length to 3, and that's because that's the width I like on bottom hems. And so we're going to go ahead and hem it down. So we're going to just sew a straight stitch all the way down and pivot at our mark. Okay, so once you get to your mark, you want to make sure your needle is down, and then you lift your presser foot, turn the fabric, and then you're going to continue sewing straight. So now we're at the corner where we're going to make a turn. You're going to try to make a little box when you make a turn here at the slit opening. So you're going to stop, leave your needle down, lift your presser foot, turn it, turn your fabric, lower your presser foot, so straight across, lift your presser foot, turn your fabric again, should be back pretty close to a 1/2 inch, try to get to a 1/2 inch, and then you're going to sew down and do the other side. Then you get to your pivot point again, lift your presser foot, turn, make sure your needle's down, lower your presser foot, and sew back across. So now your tunic is all hemmed up, and now just give it a final press and you're ready to rock and roll and wear it. Alright, thank you so much for watching. If you missed the skirt tutorial for this pattern, I'll leave a link in the description box for you to check out. And also don't forget to go ahead and check out T's tutorials for the jacket and pants versions of this pattern as well. And all those links will be in the description box. Alright, thank you so much for watching. If you got value from this tutorial, be sure to hit the like button down below, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you won't miss any future tutorials. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.